So, there's this game, right? Sunset Overdrive. And it's amazing. It's probably one of the best, if not the best exclusive on the Xbox One console. But there was this big conspiracy, right? All these major corporations tried to cover the whole thing up with their own generic AAA titles. Now, there are monsters running around out there.
Who wants to buy an unfinished game?
boxes.
I got unfinished
Buy
games
loot
here.
boxes.
Come
Buy
on,
our loot
buy
boxes.
these unfinished games.
You bastards.
Loot boxes. Buy money.
You bastards. Anyway, I'd say that Sunset Overdrive is in my top 3 favourite games of all time. And I just said my favourite on the internet, which means it was magically transformed into objectively best. And if you disagree with me, well, I won't regard you as human. But why would I say that? And if it's so great, then why did it get barely any traction on release? Well, first of all, I want to thank you for watching this video because it's going to be a long one. And hopefully you'll stick around long enough to let me tell you why I think that Sunset Overdrive is such an underrated title.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Sunset Overdrive is an open-world traversal adventure game released in 2014 by Insomniac Games and is the greatest game that nobody gave a shit about, except for me and a select few. Sure, after release it earned itself some more fans from those who decided to give it a chance and ended up loving it, but I was there from the E3 reveal, man. Very few people seemed to take heed among the other games, but it stuck out to me like a shining diamond. A year later, in 2014, the extended gameplay trailer was shown off at E3. This trailer is awesome, and it's important. We'll be coming back to it over the course of this video because this trailer right here, encapsulates everything I'm about to talk about. The game came out in late 2014, and while it managed to garner somewhat of a small loyal cult, of which I am an ordained level 5 hierophant, most critics and players who tried it unanimously rested on the consensus that it was pretty good. You know, pretty good. Like Joaquin Phoenix's performance as Joker, Christmas Morning to a 6-year-old, or multiple orgasms. Pretty good. It's still underperformed in sales, only selling about 250,000 copies in its initial release. 4 years down the line, it has broken 1 million, but only barely. Compare this to Insomniac's latest game at the time this video was uploaded, PS4's Spider-Man, which according to Sony's reports sold 3.3 million copies in its first 3 days. That's a record, and towers over what Sunset Overdrive managed to pull. No, I'm not here to convince you to maybe give it another chance. I'm not even here to change your mind about whether you liked it or not. I'm just here to explain my position and hopefully make people understand where I'm coming from when I say that I think that Sunset Overdrive is to date the best exclusive on the Xbox One and maybe even the greatest game on the current generation of consoles. This is going to be a big one, so for convenience sake, let's break this up a little bit. We'll talk about the basic information of the game, the cons, the pros, the reasons it's so underrated, and maybe the reasons why, after all is said and done, it kind of underperformed. And I gotta mention, I'm gonna try to avoid it where I'm able, but there are gonna be spoilers of all kinds in this video. But I do have to say, this game really is one that more than anything gives you the chance to enjoy the ride. It's the details that make this game. Sunset Overdrive is an amazing experience regardless of if you know the twists and turns of the story. I can tell you after editing a lot of the video at this point that there's not actually that much spoilers going on in this video. I'm definitely not going to give away the ending or anything. But if you do want absolutely everything saved for you firsthand, I can still understand that, and I recommend switching the video off. That being said, for everyone else, let's rock and roll. So what is Sunset Overdrive? Well, it's a sandbox adventure game with a massive focus on free-flowing traversal used to get around the world and outmaneuver enemies. The free running aspect is actively encouraged by also doubling as a sort of dodge and power system. The more you move around, the more immune you are to taking hits and the faster your combo and style meter can grow. The style meter effectively activates equipable perks known as amps that change up the gameplay with things like random lightning strikes or even having your own announcer narrating your fights. The combat system has an arcadey feel to it, focusing on high quantity hits and regular weapon switching in order to tackle the copiously dense hordes that you'll be confronted with. These hordes for the most part come in the form of raging mutants. See, despite the colourful and almost childlike aesthetic, this is a game set in a dystopian apocalypse of the near future. You play as a down and out slacker who starts the game in a shitty minimum wage job for a major, and majorly corrupt, soda company, until they accidentally contaminate their latest drink, Overcharge. This colossal cock-up of a concoction is what mutates everyone into the rambling OD, or overcharged drinkers, that over the course of the night will overthrow and rampage through Sunset City, while you make your way back home and barricade yourself in your apartment. The journey there is where your player character discovers their ability to superhumanly navigate around by bouncing, grinding and swinging, and the tutorial here is easy to grasp and flows well in the context. You get home and try to survive until you're rescued by Old Man Walter, who takes you to a survivor base where you'll learn the basics of how to fight and explore on your own, and meet a small cast of characters. One of the amazing things about this game is how likeable and unique each and every character is, even just the shopkeepers. No character signifies this better than Floyd, a highly important NPC. He gives you some quests, helps you develop upgrades, and is your second-hand instructor after Walter. Floyd is the best character in this game. He has the funniest lines, the most charming personality, and his philosophy constantly expresses the main point of why I'm making this video. Again, more on that later. It's also here you learn what went down on what the remaining survivors call Horror Night. After Fizco, the soda company that you worked for, fudged up and turned everyone into monsters, they've sealed off the city and are trying to cover up the incident in order to protect their brand and their profit and all that jazz.
Why would Fizco poison their own customers?
You got it wrong. The whole thing was an accident. The Fizco execs were so worried about competition, they rushed Overcharge through government testing. They fucked up, and now they'll do whatever they can to protect their stock price.
This is a highly advanced company who take unscrupulous measures to make this happen, despite the presence of Fizzy, their forever cheery and constantly looming mascot. Fizco's forces are made up of battle robots of all shapes and sizes for you to fight. There are also still roving groups of survivors that have turned to criminalism after the apocalypse, forming bands of raiders known as Scabs, whom you'll also encounter regularly.
Scabs fighting Fizco? I call winner!
And so you're off to find supplies and in the process meet other survivors. These come in the form of cliques or subcultures grouped within the world like the Oxfords, a bunch of private school kids holed up in one of those animatronic pizza arcades. We don't have those in England, so I don't know, it's like Five Nights at Fizzy's or something. You've also got Troop Bushido, a group of scouts who have taken refuge in an old Japanese war museum. My personal favourite, the Fargathians, an army of LARPers who have mental breakdowns when the apocalypse hit and now really believe they live in a medieval kingdom. And the Las Catrinas, a squad of Day of the Dead cheerleaders that look after surviving children in a downtown hospital. You'll also meet the odd individual here and there, prominently Bucky, a militant broadcasting redneck who provides you with timed horde-style challenges and in turn loot and upgrades. It sounds like these characters don't mesh very well, but it's how different they all are that truly gives the game that sense of individuality, and it's enjoyable to see so many kinds of characters interact and cooperate with each other. Each group has their own aesthetic style, behaviour and motivations, and this shows through in more than just their clothing.
You made a kid with tonsillitis happy. It's not like you saved the world or anything.
Yeah, I did tonsillitis. I thought he had cancer.
Much of the game's main storyline is spent trying to convince these groups to either help you find a way to escape the city or take down the Fizco Corporation. And yeah, in that regard, there's not much to the story, which was a consistent complaint in reviews, but oh, how wrong those reviews were. There's a massive focus on characterization and world building, massive even compared to other, sometimes assumingly larger games. In this regard, the game feels constantly packed with activities to do and things to care about, which is more than I can say for some games that try to give you titanic open worlds filled with nothing to care about.
Though the start to finish of this game can be summed up in a basic statement, it's when you isolate one or a few events here that work together to develop characters or reveal information about the world that you find plenty of bang for your buck.
I've got a story for you. A hero has to save the princess he loves from an evil king so that they can live happily ever after. Sounds like a pretty boring and generic idea for a film, right? Real hero saves princess fairy tale kind of stuff? Well, I just described the basic plot to The Princess Bride. That's a lot of people's favourite film of all time. It's simple to explain when you dumb it down like that, but look at the characterization and the passion for storytelling going on within the folds. You can't, and you shouldn't, judge the soul and density of a story by how simple the framework is.
All the characters are brought to life through memorable quest lines and just massively pleasant interactions. Plus the comedy really elevates your engagement here, and this isn't one of those games that tries really hard to be funny and fails. It's a hoot from beginning to end, and I mean right to the end, a la The Last Frame. Besides story missions, you've got plenty of other things to do in the world. There are of course side quests, which will provide you with extra currency in the form of overcharge cans for buying guns and money for buying clothes. Sometimes you'll even unlock other pieces of clothing from these. But I can't call these special or unique clothing items, as every clothing item is unique. Nothing is just a plain t-shirt or a reskin, especially as each and every item comes with 4 colour and design varieties to choose from. I've got no fucking idea why a game more based around combat managed to have better clothing variety than the last handful of Sims games, but there you go. This game nails customization, and the great thing is, all the characters are so uniquely proportioned and the game is so colourful as is, it's the only example I can think of where your character doesn't stick out like a sore thumb among the other NPCs, no matter how crazy you dress yourself. There are a number of challenges to play also, some are great, but some are reminiscent of those repetitive tedium found in other open world games. They give you a rating from bronze to gold, and they're all points based, so the better you do, the higher your score and better the reward. They include bomb delivery, points collection challenge, traversal challenges, basically jumping through hoops, and glider shooting ranges. Aside from all that, there's bookies challenges, where you'll try to kill as many OD as possible on a timer while completing mini objectives to boost your score. You can also revisit a feature known as Night Defense, sprinkled here and there through the main campaign as well, where you'll defend vats filled with overcharge at your bases from oncoming hordes of OD while Floyd upgrades them. You're provided with traps to lay down to help you do this, and these are honestly my favourite of the external challenges, as aside from being the most fun, also provide you with more upgrade perks. While the game's pretty casual to play and complete, getting gold in some of these events is where you're quite rightly going to find the most challenge in the game. Now, how do you, as a player, actually function in this world? Well, you'll mainly be focusing on moving and fighting. There's a huge and incredibly unique arsenal of weapons to battle and experiment with. All the while, you'll get quickly used to using these in free flow as you use the environment of the city to get around, mostly in the form of ledges, telephone wires, train rails, cars and canopies. Thankfully, this is easily done with simple yet fluent and accurate controls. Most of it only uses ARX, which function as jumping, wall hopping, wall running, grinding, higher bouncing, water skimming and roll dodging. Later on in the game you'll unlock a dash with the RB, which essentially eliminates any reason to ever touch the ground ever again when you don't want to. Seriously, it's The Floor is Lava, the video game. In terms of combat, your goal is going to be getting to unlock and play with the ludicrous munitions that only get bigger and better over the course of the game, which can for the most part be purchased from Two Hat Jack using cans of overcharge. Once weapons have leveled up from continued use, you can adorn them with weapon amps. These are your upgrades. They'll put new effects or higher bonuses on your guns, such as electrifying chains of enemies doing more damage at less health, or my personal favourite, attaching a perk that gives each kill a chance to spawn a nuclear bloody explosion. Top tip, attach this to the one-handed dragon. It homes in so you'll never miss, it's got explosive properties anyway, and it's very usually a one-hit kill as is. These amps are built by Floyd using materials you gather that come in the form of fizzy balloons, hanging shoes, toilet paper, neon signs and security camera lenses that you'll find in limited quantities around the city to collect. Among these gameplay goodies are other world-building collectibles such as graffiti billboards, observation spots, smartphone messages and radio signals you can listen in on. There's also respawnable passing events such as loot crates, not the cancerous EA kind of ones though, that parachute in from the air and are filled with spendables, survivors to rescue in multiple situations, whether they be caged or put in front of a Fizco firing squad. Jeez.
Initiating extermination protocol.
We almost died, didn't we?
And these blimps you can shoot down, which I honestly didn't know about until putting this video together, even having completed it several times. One collectible that the game won't tell you about comes in the form of these childish scrawlings that you'll find on walls. These are actually drawings from a real life kid, the daughter of Sunset's game director Drew Murray, who put them in as an Easter egg dedicated to her, and when you collect them all you get the Ainsley set of clothing inspired by her. Now that's just rad, and top dad points to Drew Murray for that. The other way to boost your character's ability is with overdrives, the game's namesake. Doing certain things within the game will earn you badges pertaining to that action. For example, killing enough OD will earn you an OD killing badge. Accumulate enough of these badges and you can use them to purchase a related overcharge, e.g. if you kill enough OD to garner enough OD killing badges, you can use those badges to purchase an overcharge that lets you inflict an extra 10% damage against OD enemies. Are you still with me? Ooh, I told you this game is thick, boy. Boom, you know what's in the game, you know what it's about, and you know how to play it. Now we gotta move on to something important. And I want to prelude the next section. I want to prelude. I got to prelude the next section, I'm just going to take a guess on that, by divulging to you all a personal philosophy. And you might not all like what I have to say. You've all got favourite things, I imagine, a favourite film, a favourite game. And it appeals to you so much, doesn't it? It's almost like it was made for you. You wish more films or games were like that one, don't you? It's essentially a part of you, and that's understandable. My favourite pieces of media are a strong part of me too. But buckle your ani, okay, as I reveal something that you might not be very comfortable hearing, especially for the first time. That favourite thing of yours isn't perfect. It's actually very flawed. If you were to put it on a scale, it certainly wouldn't be 100% or a 10 out of 10. I don't get these people who need something to be perfect in order to love it. No, there's no flaws in The Last of Us. It's absolutely faultless. Everyone gave it a 10 out of 10. You know how much of a reliable judge general gaming outlets are? Instead of needing something to be perfect so you can say you love it, wouldn't it be better to be able to identify something as imperfect but still be able to explain why you love it anyway? I mean, it's the flaws that make something interesting anyway, right? They're what make it human. If a game came out and the story was perfectly laid out and there were no bugs and there was a decent but manageable amount of activities and the dialogue was everything you'd expect it to be, that did its job but didn't excel at anything, I'd be inclined to say, oh, I can't find anything wrong with this game. Well, this was clearly constructed by a fucking robot with no soul. It's like Sunset Overdrive itself. Yeah, the physical robots look clean and they're as efficient as can be and they make easily digestible products. Mutations excluded, mind you. But a human covered in dirty paint, making loud noises and tripping over themselves will always come along and kick their mechanical, bland, mass-produced asses any day. So with that in mind, even though this is one of my favourite games of all time, I've identified quite a list of cons to go through, which I've tried to organise from least worrisome to most egregious, and I think it's only fair that we take the good with the bad here and be honest with ourselves. So here is a list of the game's biggest flaws. Flaw number 1. The game has a great HUD and UI design, but their functionality is sometimes a little lacking. The cursor on the map moves just slow enough to be unhelpful, and sometimes the menu can take an unfortunate amount of time to open up or scroll through. It's not like they're broke, and this one's a bit of a nitpick, but like I said, I'll start with the very smallest and work upwards. Number 2, the tutorials. A lot of the control and weapon tutorials are actually really great, but one in particular is incredibly jarring. The wall running tutorial comes around about halfway through the game. You've already cleared one of the game's 3 major islands by then in terms of storyline, and there's no way you wouldn't have figured out how to wall run by then. Also, something I hate in games is mandatory tutorials. Not tutorials that will pop up and tell you stuff in a new game, but ones that physically lock your controller while you have to sit and listen and reenact the series of controls that the game asks you to. Unfortunately, this game's got them, and they feel so out of place compared to some of the versatile freedom given to learn most other things in the game.
Attention, player!
3. This game records everything. Game clip saved here, game clip saved there, you found the pause menu, game clip recorded. You might say this is more of an Xbox issue, but the game's development is where they put placeholders for where the Xbox should record clips, and this game puts them at every quest end, every challenge end, every side quest, every major fight. It's annoying. I don't have that problem with other games because the other games don't have those clip record commands put in everywhere. Make sure you turn that crap off before you play. 4. The game's finale comes out of nowhere. I mean, not nowhere, you know when you're fighting the final boss, but takes about 15 seconds to go from the last hit to the credit sequence. There's kinda a point to this that I'll talk about more later, and another reason is because elements of this game do take inspiration from horror roots, and that's how a lot of horrors finish. They kill the final monster, the film ends. I don't know, I'm on the fence about this one. 5. This game has honestly the highest quantity of memorable and unique quests in any game I've ever played. However, it means the ones that aren't are an absolute slog that feel really out of place. A large amount of these are side quests and a large amount of these are fetch quests. Often they give you a pretty decent reward that make it worth it, but there's no way I'm going to sit here and say I enjoyed every single quest in this game. Meeting a random stranger that sends you to pick up some stuff falters in the face of the usual variety and personality in the other quests, and it's a damn shame. On top of that, a lot of the side quests are repeated within different areas and contexts. Near the end of the game, Floyd will have you go to 5 locations to put up survivor flags in the place of Fizco flags. It's boring and you do the same thing 5 times. Then you gotta do the same thing 5 times, 3 more times, because he makes you do it in all the other 3 districts of the city. And there are more examples of this. I get it adds stuff to do, but if there's one game that didn't need filler in order to have more stuff to do, it's this one. 6. I'm a huge fan of collectibles in games, as you can tell, and this one is no exception, with a great variety of them, but with so many, they're not always purposeful. I can't even tell you what you get after finding all the billboards or the radio signals, maybe apart from an achievement. Whoop-de-doo, I can only get those once, you know, where's the incentive to get them in a second playthrough? I really think these should all have been more like the Ainsley collectibles, that give you something special when you find them all, and maybe they are, but as far as I can remember, collecting all the cell phone messages doesn't do anything apart from give you some cell phone messages, and they don't even affect the game. 7. Oh boy. I wanted to talk about this one earlier, but I've had to trim this down and whatnot. In fact, if you've already played the game, you might be wondering why, when I was talking about collectibles and different events in the game, I haven't mentioned this one yet. Because I'm going to talk about it right now. And just get it all out right now. Chaos Squad. Fuck my shiny blue boots. Chaos Squad is Sunset Overdrive's multiplayer component, accessed from phone booths within the single-player world. Players form together to fight waves of OD that constantly build in difficulty, which as it increases will net greater rewards. A few of the amps you can unlock in single player are specifically beneficial for Chaos Squad, such as a foot trail that heals nearby allies. That's what I'm told, anyway. I don't know if any of this is true. I've never fucking played it. Chaos Squad is dead. I waited for nigh on 15 minutes to get into a match to get footage for this video, and if your response is,
"Well, you gotta wait longer than 15 minutes to get into an online game, don't you play online games?"
you can go drink a jar of radioactive man's jizz. It should never take that long to get into any online match. That should either be down to a fault with the individual person's connection or a fault with the developer's servers, and games that work that way as standard operation are the bane of my respect. This is of course not the case, and the more likely outcome is that nobody plays the fucking thing. First of all, the game didn't need a multiplayer system. This feels very Bioshock 2-esque, tacked on at the last minute. 2, I actually had the chance to play this game the week it came out when an equally excited friend got it. He tried getting into a match in the release week. He was also unable. The matchmaking was a cold corpse the second the game launched. What's more of a slap across the dick than that is about a quarter of the achievements for this game are multiplayer achievements. I'm sick of games doing this. If your game is mostly geared towards online, then fine. Make all your achievements multiplayer. That's your game's focus. but never break them up between single player and multiplayer, because only one of them is going to be a game's focus anyway, and a lot of people either can't or won't want to play the other aspect. Affording gold membership aside, I especially can't play it when it never worked in the first place. Keep in mind, this has not been a critique of how good or bad Chaos Squad actually works, or if it is a fun element of the game. I am unable to tell you. I am simply unable to tell you if an aspect of the game is good or not, because that aspect of the game does not work. It is content going to waste and left dangling in people's faces. I have never played Chaos Squad. Stop, rewind, play that again, Sam. I have never played Chaos Squad, and from the looks of a barren YouTube search, nobody else did either. Remove it. And remove those fucking multiplayer amps while you're at it. 8. This game, like most modern games, has its fair share of graphical bugs and audio glitches. I originally broke these up into separate points, but I'll just give you a list of the worst offenders. A couple of times the floor texture rendered but with no solid ground, causing me to fall through and into the water that runs under the entire map. I suppose this is better than falling into an infinite abyss, and I do remember one point on a previous playthrough I managed to jump up to an anchor point and recover myself, but I couldn't do that here and I had to reset the game. Character prompts during quests would break. If I was prompted to speak with a character by pressing Y, on more than one occasion the sound file for the conversation simply wouldn't play, causing the quest not to advance and thus not allowing me to progress. Sometimes the controls on the menus would screw up. If I tried to go into my weapon menu and then press A in an effort to switch my weapon loadout, instead of taking me to the weapon selection screen, it would scroll me sideways to the system options. Again, had to reset my game. It's a shame, because most games come with plentiful bugs, but they're usually just graphical curiosities. But there were many that actually affected the gameplay here. These were really the biggest physical glitches, but the audio front was much worse. Character dialogue wouldn't play, music would randomly cut out or not play at all, which actually really destroyed a majorly cool part of the story when the queue didn't come in. Sometimes voices come in early and conversational sides overlap onto one another.
Satan's fire has been quenched, and a medical wizard. Perhaps you can take a look at this postulant growth
only work
I
on
have
kings.
on my...
Sometimes background noise and voice overshadows forefront cutscene dialogue.
Unless you replace it with like a bunch more.
Justice, courage, mercy.
None of these ruin the game, it just ruins the moment, you understand. Point 9. Considering the game's named after them, overdrives really aren't that useful. I mean, you know, they do their bit for upgrading, and maybe it's just my playstyle or whatever, but amps are really way more useful here. Later on in the game, Floyd does make a joke about the name.
Ooh, overdrive. That's a good word. Fisco should have named their drink Overdrive instead of Overcharged, don't you think? Marketing folks sure fucked that one up.
So maybe it was just the name they came up with and the change for the drink's name came afterwards or something? But you're left with overdrives being the badges you collect to upgrade, and honestly, half the time I forget they're there. My final point's a bit of a weird one because it doesn't have anything to do with how the game is played, it's just my opinion. As I've said, I love the cast of characters here. It's my second favourite cast of characters in any game next to the South Park games. Each person in Sunset City adds to the immersion, and these are people you want to play around in a crazy apocalypse with. With the exception of what seem to be some quest givers that are randomly generated from the customization menu, which don't affect anything so I don't mind too much, the cast is simply awesome. Except Las Katrinas. Las Katrinas are total cunts. Yeah, the Las Katrinas are those stereotypical girls that have a mean attitude and are really aggressive to show you how tough and independent they are, that always just come off looking like total assholes. I don't know why the character writing falters here alone. Every other character is a stereotype, but they still have heart and soul, and even the ones that don't want to help you are at least funny about it or have defined reasons, even if selfish. Essentially, the Last Katrinas are one of the survivor groups, renegade cheerleader assassins who protect ill children at the children's hospital and take it very seriously.
I'll show you how to get into Fisco HQ. But sneaking you in is as far as I'm willing to go. If we get killed with you, then the kids are as good as dead.
That's their motivation, and why they don't like the player character is because you're rowdy and you go around fighting. Except it's not explained why they think that's a bad thing or why that won't be beneficial to them to cooperate with you. They're just dicks to you for no reason. In fact, they knock you out, bring you into their hospital, and then tell you they don't want you around and then throw you out again? What? Why'd they bring you in when they knocked you out then? Their leader, Esperanza, is the biggest bitch ever.
But you're not the DM of mi Flandaf. I was listening. And I'm not letting you attack Fisco HQ without Las Katrinas.
She tells you there's nothing from you she wants, except what you've been doing is helping other survivors around the city and trying to find a way to get out to safety? They don't want to get to safety? Oh, but I guess you're dangerous because you're also running around fighting OD and Fizco for supplies, like they've been doing also.
The security at Fizco HQ is super tight, but I was watching some nearby camera feeds and I noticed someone's been getting in there at night. Who? I can't really tell, but they look like cheerleaders with like Dave the Dead makeup. Oh, them.
I just really hate this character archetype of making female characters treat other characters like absolute garbage just to shortcut your way to making them seem strong and capable and individual. There's a character called Forkim who's part of the Troop Bushido group who is great. At one point she knocks out an entire train of scabs single-handedly while you're not even there. She's tough and confident, but still manages to do it while being a really fleshed out and likeable individual. I'm not saying every character has to like you straight from the off or have a nice personality. Bucky's first reaction is to point a gun at you, and half the Oxfords are total twats to you when you first meet them, but that feels like it should be who they are, and they don't have a tacked-on motivation to try to justify it. Las Katrina's motivations aren't thought out enough to warrant their behaviour towards the player, and there's no reason why they should be so aggressive and disliking towards you, besides just seemingly doing it to purposefully be rude, or to just tack on this feminine, strong character archetype without actually putting effort into it. I just saved this one for last because it's just something that stands out as a really weird point to me when characterization in this game is usually so finely crafted and enjoyable. But whenever I think of the Las Katrinas, man, I just think they're total cunts.
Oh boy, that's a lot of things wrong. That's a shame. That's a damn shame. I wouldn't have good cause to love this game, however, if all these letdowns weren't overshadowed by the surplus of enjoyability found in the rest of the game. I guess the first thing I love that I haven't really had a chance to talk about yet is the visual style. I mean, first off, look at this. Look at this texture quality right here. Am I the only one who sees this? Nobody talked about this. This was 2014. This looks fucking gorgeous in terms of graphic detail. Look at the skin. As I said, the best pieces of media are not the ones that have no flaws, but the ones that, in spite of flaws, manage to outweigh them with positive factors. And mate, this game's so positive it'll make you weep tears as you read the letter from your doctor confirming how positive it is. That's dark and depressing, I don't know why I went there so rapidly. Point is, even if you don't think it's particularly special like I do, I'd need an equally long and grammatically mismanaged video filled with redundant repetition and tangential sketches that don't lead to anything. Bad at videos. To explain to me why Sunset Overdrive is a poorly made and overall bad game. The whole experience is chock full of moments and elements that'll put a skip in your throat. I mean a horse in your heart. Fuck! It pulls off most of its primary functions with much greater skill and flair than any other game that attempts to do similar or exactly identical things. These are basically the reasons why I think, even if it doesn't end up being one of your favourite games ever, Sunset Overdrive is still highly deserving of your time. Even though I don't know exactly what kind of person you are and what your personality preferences are either, I can say that what it executes well would definitely be considered fun and quality game design by the vast majority of people.
I've talked about a few of these points before, so I'll fly through them, but just want to re-emphasize a point of how masterfully Insomniac managed to design some of these features. If there's one thing this game needed to get right, it's movement, and my god, this game has the best movement in any video game I've ever played. With traversal being the most forefront aspect of the gameplay, I'm happy to report that everything feels fluent. I think I said it before, but once you've got a hang of it, it's impossible to touch the ground. This could get really old really fast, but the designers were savvy enough to put in plenty of variety in the ways you can move around, and make doing so feel versatile enough to suit casual roaming and exciting freerunning. Sometimes I even forget there's a fast travel option, and even if I remember it's there, I often won't take it anyway.
Good thing this game has fast travel.
You're all familiar with Spider-Man 2 on the PlayStation 2, it continues to be lauded for its ability to make travelling itself an enjoyable feature. I know I'm not the only one that spent hours upon hours swinging around catching the balloons of kids that constantly lost hold of them. If there's anything that game taught me, it's that 1. Video games can be enjoyable simply through experiencing a world as you move through it. And 2, all children in New York are born without thumbs. And there are many other games that achieve this feeling, sailing around aimlessly in Black Flag, zooming around without a care in Burnout Paradise. Many of the GTA games excel at this, especially on motorways. It's what I call a
freedom system,
making you feel like you're untethered and free to go wherever you wish to within the specific world you're currently inhabiting. And despite the urgency of a giant mutant horde rushing beneath you, you always feel like you have the freedom and the power to zoom away on a telephone wire and fuck that right off. And that's an immense feeling. The feeling of fucking right off. It's no coincidence that Insomniac went on to make their own Spider-Man game, by the way, and I'm not the first to compare them. It was the fantastic traversal aspects of Sunset that reminded others of that Spider-Man 2 gameplay, prompting some to speculate openly to the developers how they should take that engine and those mechanics and apply them to a Spider-Man game. Which they only went and bloody did. Despite the fact that casual traversal is incredibly leisurely, the amazing thing about Sunset City is that there's always something to be done. With so many collectibles that you're constantly passing, it never feels too difficult to step out of your way and pull off a quadruple salchow with an inverted mid-air pirouette. Or you can just press back and turn around, to go and pick them up in style. I always get an unnatural pleasure when I pick up a mouldy pair of stinking trainers, but then my fetish is my own, and your judgment isn't welcome here. Main quests, side quests, challenges, collectibles, free roam events, customization, leveling, and just straight up trying to wipe out roving hordes gives the world a massive amount of life even after the end of the world. The game also handles many figures on screen incredibly well, almost to a baffling degree compared to other games. It's commonplace you'll be fighting against over 60 enemies at once, with a variety of multiple factions, functions, and rank. It's a common annoyance of mine that many post-apocalyptic pieces of media seem to rely so heavily on the average lives of the humans that they centre on, and the apocalypse element feels like an afterthought. Look mate, if I want to watch people talk for 3 hours about relationships, I'll stick on the Sunday morning Emmerdale marathon. And if I want a zombie in the background now and again, I'll blue tack a paper cutout next to the characters on screen. Alright?
Wow. It's just like watching The Walking Dead Season 2.
Sunset, in my mind, is the best depiction of any apocalypse to date, managing to focus its story almost entirely on the front and centre issue that lives are in danger and the world has turned to shit, while still managing along the way to create 5 times as much character empathy than any other dystopian game, show or movie has ever done. I've talked about this characterization quite a bit because it is, next to the movement element, the second thing this game does the absolute best. Its ability to make likeable people, no matter how much of a stereotype they are, towers over most other open world examples. This is partly thanks to the way the models are rendered, with unique facial structures for each character made possible through the exaggerated proportions that remind me what a damn shame it is that most games try to do individual look mostly through graphic texture and not artistic structure. But to me, the element that first and foremost makes this standout identity happen is the voice acting. It's a damn crime the cast of this game didn't get larger praise for their effort, because the work here is stellar. Each is fitting and extra props have to be given to the actors for the player character, either male or female. Yuri Lowenthal and Stephanie Lemelin respectively. My favourite elements of delivery come from just wandering round, the quips and instructions your character will give while spotting a firefight or taking out enemies.
But if this doesn't start the crane and I have to keep running around killing OD and looking for keys, I'll probably rage quit. Lowers! Oh my god, I'm covered in leeches! Somebody help me! Why won't anyone help me? It rubs
the lotion on its skin. Put the lotion in the basket!
He and I talked about you a lot.
Oh, my character moment sense is tingling.
There's something special about you. But it's buried beneath a whole lot of wise ass.
Oh, gee whiz, thanks for the revelation, Freud. Damn it, I just proved your point, didn't I?
Also Larry Heron, who played Floyd. I mean, honestly, the fun that these guys had while recording just rings out while you listen to these characters. It's not just the friendly NPCs that get this treatment. Each roaming enemy is a great fun design with plenty of diversity. So just as an example of what I'm talking about, I'm just editing this video together right now, just going frame by frame in it. And in the game there are these flying enemies called wingers right there. And just going through this in editing, I've only just noticed that the wings on these creatures are actually, if I can get a good frame of it, they're actually just the canopies, like the fabric that covers the tops of cafes. Because obviously these creatures were once human, and this would just be them mutating and fusing with the canopies of these cafes. Which again is a really small detail that goes overlooked. I've played through it about 7 times, 8 times maybe, and never noticed that very small detail. And that's just the level of personality in these designs that I'm talking about. The same applies to bosses. Actually, especially to bosses. If you haven't played it yet, I promise you that Fizzy is one of the best villain characters you will meet in any game. And each of the times you encounter him are honestly some of my favourite parts of the whole experience. The immersion is bolstered by how inclusive the game is of player customization, with the integration of a less is more attitude. No call is made towards a character's name, gender, personality or style preference, and there's no romance plot, at least not for the player character. While many other games try to stuff all these elements in to further a sense of being a part of the world, it often ends up hindering that feeling by not accounting for all the variables and not doing it properly. Sunset Overdrive's player inclusion is carefully constructed with a simple and effective approach, with plenty of surface variety, which means you can make your character look how you want, and the rest of the immersive factors follow in casual simplicity. I've talked about immersion a lot, and I know many people probably look at a game like this with its unreal colour palette, its fourth wall breaks, its imaginary approach to physics, and discard the idea that it could make you relate to and get sucked into the experience, but it's true. And maybe I'm alone, but I think you'll feel it more if you get a chance to play it yourself. You fall into and really enjoy your time in this world. Another way the story and the city pull you in is with abhorrently underrated quest design. I think I've completed the game about 5 or 6 times, and each time I go into it I think, oh, I can't wait to get to that quest, it's my favourite. Then I realise it's right at the beginning. Then the next quest comes and I think, oh no wait, this one's my favourite. But then the next quest comes, and so on and so on. The jokes and the enjoyability increase the more you play, and this is thanks to a stunningly varied application of one-time gimmicks and functions that give each quest a personality. You'll remember them as the quest where you ride a train, or the quest where you operate a crane game, or the quest where you have to mass murder pigeons with a blunderbuss. And while I'm sure many who play it had their own qualms about the functionality of the various tasks, I for one found them to slot incredibly fluently into the overall control system, so each one felt responsively appropriate and thematically fresh. It can't be understated that this is one of the most repeatable and unique main storylines in any game you'll play, and it hasn't got old yet. Speaking of most unique element of games you'll play, the weapon selection here is my favourite. Hands down, it's just my favourite. Even on the surface level design, it's my favourite. A fire extinguisher that shoots exploding teddy bears, a gun that fires vinyl bouncing discs, a converted bowling rack called the Dude. I shouldn't have to tell you why that's awesome, but then that's just like my opinion, man. Each fires differently and feels necessary to create a mixed arsenal. This is especially important as experimenting and changing them often is a fundamental desire of the game's system. You won't get bored playing with these toys, mate. Stylistically, the game is beautiful, not just in in-world design, but also the external designs. By this I mean the HUD, map, UI, and all that jazz. Mainly wanted to bring this up in order to talk about something interesting I noticed during gameplay. This is one of the only games I can think of with an open world format and a minimap, where I find myself going hours of gameplay without actually looking at it. First of all, even though the HUD and gameplay is what can best be described as arcadey, which might not appeal to everyone, the HUD is still inobtrusive against the already bright colour scheme. The quest markers are so small on the screen that they're not necessarily an afterthought, but they don't pull focus away from the game's main goals, exploration and travel. I love this because in so many games that claim to be open world exploration games, that feature is very often played secondary through the way the game is designed. Yes, in examples like the Witcher and Fable series you can roam around and find things to do, but it's all in the pursuit of eventually collecting everything so you can get strong enough to finish the main quest. Many components here work to upgrade you in order to just make your free roaming more fun. This gives you plenty of options for why you want to play the game and where your focus is. And the quest markers are perfect examples of this. Always there as an option, but never explicitly demanding you follow them. At least that's how I look at them. Now there's an unspoken star in this game that we haven't talked about yet, just because there's been so much to get through. But it's time to give them music. It's much deserved props. Thematically, it's already very important. You have a gun that fires vinyl records for one thing, but the music is even better than you think. First off, look, I know this music isn't everyone's cup of tea, but the issue here is not that it's your kind of thing. What's important is that it's fitting, and I'm happy to say it's perfectly fitting. Some of the music is custom made for the game, and as a result it's made with the same mood and tone in mind, which makes it the best possible music the game could have for one thing. But apart from that, as far as I can tell, there's 3 different settings for the music here based off your movement and urgency. One for when you're out of danger and walking around on your feet, one for when you're traversing around and stringing free flow together, and one for while you're moving around in combat, each respectively characterised by ambient noise, instrumental repeating beats, and then full-on vocal songs. The fact that the music is custom adds to that personality I've been talking about. There's a brilliant moment where a battle is accompanied by a medieval bard playing a classical and basic tune on a lute, complete with lyrics reminiscent of middle-aged poems.
A battle is coming, let me sing the song of Hans. I can smell the breath of our enemies, but a bunch of sodding.
Yes, lovely tune, quite enough, Bob, thank you.
That bard, unfortunately though, gets ganked.
King's Pride! We have defeated the Skanes mates, but we must continue our harvest!
Chandler, sire? Mayhap I have a word?
Silence, anachronizer! Where be our bard?
He's dead.
Moments later, the role is taken up by a non-medieval character who plays the exact same song and lyrics, but on an electric guitar with high-tempo rock vocals.
Can I be the new bard? I'm sick of being a smither. I want to be something more fun.
Indeed! You may play as the new bard!
Kick ass!
We hit, we slash, we scratch, we slay. Goblin fools, stay away. From the earth we spill their blood, such a blood.
Orcish archers near the Bumbidoos!
Saving our grace, the king.
We hit, we slash, we scratch, we slay. Goblin fools, stay away. Into the earth we spill their blood, such a flood. It makes blood. Don't you want to chop it down? Saving our grace, the king of the ground. 3, 4, buried round, buried round.
It sounds like it's not a big thing, but at the same time the challenge increases and the stakes get higher. And it's this sense of building the mood and executing the sense of adrenaline that makes it more than just a scene you can explain in words. It's what it makes you feel when it happens while you're playing, and that can only be achieved through building together details like that. And details is this game's last great element. Everything I've talked about in terms of the game's pros, everything has only been achievable through the massive attention to detail going on here. I couldn't possibly list every example as we're already running way past on time, but a good example is the thought put into things that didn't even need it. You don't need a logical progressive explanation to fast travel. You could just pick a spot on the map, go through a loading screen and end up there. But do you? No. You get drunk, pass out and wake up with a hangover in a porta potty at your fast travel location. It's fantastic to see the first time you do it. You didn't need to make deaths enjoyable. The player's actively trying to avoid them anyway. You could have just had the character die, loading screen and then drop back in. But did they? No. There's an array of fun and hilarious death animations to try to find in this game. Yes, death animations, or should I say more like respawn animations, are technically a collectible. They're chock full of gags and references that make an otherwise frustrating piece of any other gaming experience actually very charming. I know these were both to do with animations, but there's more detail here, like design-wise, the arcade machines and the Oxford bass, and I actually didn't notice an actual animatronic band was performing in there until my third playthrough. There is style and panache in every little thing, and the reason this is important is because it portrays to me the single most important factor of any game. that it's clear to see the developers had fun making it, that the passion they had shines through within the world of the game. And though it's not my absolute favourite game of all time, and while it has its flaws, plenty of flaws, I can't think of another example that excels at this point more than Sunset Overdrive. It's reminiscent of some of Twisted Pixel's earlier work. If you're not familiar, they're the developers of Splosion Man and Comic Jumper. They've always been an indie studio, and because of this, they're never trying to blow minds or hit mega budgets. They're just trying to be themselves and make a game that represents that. I think Insomniac have a great track record for the same thing. The creators put liveliness into the development of this game, and as a result, the world always feels alive. For a game set in an apocalypse? That's a pretty great achievement, and I think those ethics, even if the game's not for you, is worth admiration.
Hold your bean sprouts, you digestive biscuits, you, because I'm not done with you yet. Or you think all that stuff's what makes the game special? No. That's just what the game does well. Yeah, this game's base functions are the best examples of their respective applications in the medium. Fucking Witcher 3's over here, trying and failing to make travel a thing. Like, I'm getting on a horse and it looks so good, the animation's so fluent. But if I just need it to be in the right spot. I'm almost done, I just need the animation cycle to line up with the correct angle of the Boom! In comes Sunset Overdrive, free roaming around the city with consummate ease. Controls do whatever I tell them to. Do you see this? This is the tutorial. You perfect movement in the first 10 minutes. CD Projekt Red's control scheme just got cooked by Insomniac. Sunset spinning in your Xbox in ways The Witcher 3 could only dream of. Okay. Let's settle down. This is actually very important. Let's bring the mood down a little bit. Because there are very special reasons why I think this game stands out. This is why we're here. And you don't have to agree with me. And this is probably going to be incredibly fragmented. But this is what I feel when I play Sunset Overdrive. No one, I think, has a special game or a favourite game that stands out to them just because it excels at technical elements better than any other game. I don't think that's true. I think there needs to be something else. I think it has to represent something. I think it has to connect with something that person believes or wants, even if it's just out of a game. And it can be hard for us to put that into words sometimes. But here's me trying. Here's me trying to put into words why this game emotionally connected with me in its own special way. Enjoy.
Let's go back to that reveal trailer again. The green blippy text associated with all military shooters dots across the screen, and the gritty colour palette introduces a generic no-name soldier. Yeah, okay, another FPS, you say to yourself, as you expect nothing out of the ordinary from an industry currently popularised by this kind of image. If you saw this for the first time without knowing what was coming, you missed out on a great feeling. Because when you then see the door with the slightly brighter hue, stamped with the Insomniac logo, like there's a laboratory back there and they've been cooking up some ungodly creation that's ready to rampage across the Xbox One's standardized library, you can feel something different and exciting is coming. The door explodes with colour and whimsy, completely opposite to the mature realism of the game it first portrayed, the game that slots fittingly into the landscape of current games. And this image, right here, is why I wanted a game like Sunset Overdrive. Why we needed a game like Sunset Overdrive. It's easy, and makes plenty of sense, for companies and audiences alike to follow what's currently popular. There should be more examples of the things that people like the most. But let's take a look at the year Sunset Overdrive came out. Looking specifically at Xbox games, and ones where combat is the focus, what are the major options? Titanfall, Advanced Warfare, Far Cry 4, the Master Chief Collection, Watch Dogs, Ground Zeroes, Alien Isolation, Assassin's Creed Unity, The Evil Within, Destiny. These aren't necessarily bad games, that's subjective, but you can't put Sunset Overdrive in a box with them because it simply does things too different to what those games do. And though it makes sense to give the majority what they want, we still need different on the fray. I know that sounds very cult classic of me, but those are the pieces that, to my mind, often have the most style while getting their deserved praise for the deeper substance within. This trailer is a perfectly timed statement on the current gaming market that, back then, and still to this day, is focused towards realism, drama, and trying to shortcut to immersion by appealing to realism. And that means acknowledging its medium as little as possible, which Sunset Overdrive completely deviates from.
Come on! For the game! An excellent conceit! For His Majesty Ignatius!
This is Sunset Overdrive, not E.T. Give me some space. Let me work.
It's easy, with the format being so overused, to assume fourth wall breaks are crass and needless by default whenever you see them, but they have a point here, and is a point that doesn't get emphasized until you play the game in full. The entire existence of this game is made to mock and call attention to the standardized, dramatized maturity of the industry's selection of modern games, particularly the military shooter games. And look, if you love military games and FPSs, then that's awesome. There are a few I love myself. But you'd be ignoring clear available evidence to not see that the major, overwhelming amount of games released are bang shooties that have to look as much like the real world as possible, regardless even of elements like fantasy or sci-fi. I'll move on to more examples in a second, but let's stay with this trailer one more time. The player character brightly explodes through the door, and the first thing he says to the soldier is,
"Cover mechanic, right?"
I love this, for two reasons. One, on top of the numerous problems I have with FPS games, one of them is a lack of actual depth of interactability. That all gets saved for purpose-built cinematic moments rather than implemented into the gameplay itself. And the most obvious example of this is a lack of a dedicated cover system in many of them, especially Call of Duty titles. You're in a fucking war and you can't put your back against a wall and blind fire out? By the way, ducking while you happen to be stood in front of an object and strafing from behind and in front of said object is not a cover system. That's you ducking and moving while something is periodically in your way and blocking bullets. Don't tell me it can't be done. My favourite shooter is Rainbow Six Vegas 2, which implemented a stunning cover system into its first-person fundamentals, and it makes me seethe that out of all the things FPSs feel they need to take from each other, they felt that a fucking jetpack was more pertinent than a dedicated cover system. The second thing I love about this line is what it's saying about the game that's being introduced, Sunset. Right after saying this, the main character jumps into the pit of enemies, wall runs, swings and grinds, what we've now come to expect from Sunset Overdrive, but foreshadowing for us a very simple rule. You don't need a cover system in order to have an interactable element of defense, at least not in this game. You're not scared of bullets, not if you can implement the mechanics right and use the world as well as the weapons, use your defense as effectively as you use your offense. This is what FPSs lack with their inability to interact with and utilize the environment, and Sunset's traversal mechanics being used to dodge and maneuver enemy fire is an exaggeration of that, taking the idea of, hey dummies, there's a world around you, use it, to its absolute extreme. Sunset doesn't just parody shooters, it parodies gaming conventions, storytelling, and media at large. The story is kept simple because this is its major focus. It's easy to forget that, when created with passion, the media we enjoy is very often made with a central theme, and I believe this was Sunset's central theme. Go back and watch a movie or play a game that you love that you feel the creators really cared about, and when you pay close attention to the subjects that push story elements, even in isolated events or certain quests or scenes, I think you'll identify one overarching theme that keeps cropping up. Sunsets, in my opinion, is making a statement on and mocking the standardized conventions of games and movies we've grown to popularize and accept. It'll just be easier to show you some examples of these within the game.
Wow, that was amazing. Are you like a superhero or something?
What?
It's just the way you move, the things you do.
If you come back to our base, I might be able to figure out a way to track it down.
Okay, cool. I'm on my way. Wait, how do we communicate with Sam when neither of us is holding a phone?
You know, technology.
Technology.
Let's not complicate things by poking holes in the way we deliver the story, okay?
Oh, okay then. I'm gonna go back to the base and be magically gone by the time you have control.
Fine by me. That's not weird at all.
I should have never existed. Please, cast me into the bay and drown my memory into oblivion.
Sam, what do I do?
I don't know, but he has a point. The world is better off without him.
Go on, into the water with me. Perhaps a fish or a small crab can turn me into its home. Please, throw me into the water. Erase me from this world. Please, please, just a little toss. I'd roll myself in if I could. I know now why you cry, but it's something I can never do.
This would be way better with some spy movie music. Now that's more like it.
It rubs the lotion on its skin. Put the lotion in the basket!
I just wanted to say, in case we all die, you've been a really good friend.
Just a friend?
Maybe more. But let's talk about that if we survive.
Okay. And, same to you, Poor Kim. It's nice to know there's people like you in this world.
Aw, that's really sweet.
You two shut up!
I didn't even have to check game facts.
I'm just here to steal computer parts from you.
How'd you think you were gonna do that when I got this here gun?
Yeah, I got guns too.
Damn! But how do I know you can use them?
He didn't have an icon dealy thing on his head, so am I supposed to chase him?
Yes, you should follow him.
Okay, scary, helpful voice man. Hey, you need help with anything?
Me? Nope. Just closing up shop, honey.
You sure you don't need something? I mean, there's a spinny icon above your head, and it's really compelling.
What, that? Oh, just testing it out. Making sure it's rotating properly. Go on, sweetie. I'm fine here. Fine, but I really shouldn't be giving into a quest junkie. We use our quest icon to encourage survivors to donate money for the children. If you want the icon, you gotta finish today's rounds.
And as the beast bear is hidden...
What? I have a power core? Why did I not know this? Everybody knows the only reason you have a power core is so someone can destroy the power core!
I just lost the best friend I've ever had.
We all lost a friend.
And the world lost a hero.
A hero that will live on, in this city and in our hearts forever.
Whoa, wait a minute. That's the ending? Are you serious? Whose idea was that? Yours? Or yours? Oh, bad move, guys. NeoGaf is gonna eat you alive. You know what? I deserve a better ending. I got an idea. Okay, rewind!
I just lost the best friend I've ever had.
I had a thought while putting together this script that, in this regard, the fetch quests even deliver the same purpose, and the feeling that they give you of monotony is entirely intentional as the game makes commentary on games that do specifically that kind of thing. That might sound like I'm making an excuse for one of the game's negatives, but the character in-game does directly address that these quests are repetitive and dull as you do them, giving credence to this idea. In that sense, the game purposefully delivers the tedious feeling of doing fetch quests or mundane side quests, and then actively says, "See? Ain't this a bad feeling? Don't you hate when other games do this?" Which is brilliant. It's still boring to do even here, but if games are going to keep doing this, it's nice to have one that's saying something about it. Bottom line is, through fourth wall breaks, self-awareness, careful use of pop culture references, exaggeration of conventions and tropes, and plenty of parody, Sunset Overdrive is a game made to stand apart from all video games, as it says something about video games. Of course, a game saying, "Look at me, I know I'm a game," isn't worth much as a how if it isn't in service of a why. This is why a lot of fourth wall breaks and pop culture references are lambasted nowadays for being lazy or pointless. Let's look back at those games we talked about earlier, and instead of looking at the gameplay format of them, let's look at their creative elements. The story, the genre, the tone. Quite a varied colour palette, right? Saturated, gloomy, dark greys and greens. Oh, never mind that. Must have been a popular year for dark, depressing dramas. Let's skip ahead a year. Oh, okay. I guess people didn't have their fix yet. 2016? God damn it. 2017. Okay, well that's slightly better, but only because 2017 was a better year for indie titles than for mainstream titles. Look, you get my point. Look at this pile of box art and tell me which one catches your eye first. Now, if a cover's main purpose is to sell and deliver the tones and themes of the game inside, you can pretty much apply the same principles to the mood, story, and genre of Sunset's gameplay when stacked against all these other games. This game aesthetically is different to any other in terms of its model design and its colour palette, sure, but those things are just the nervous system running to the central heart, the reason that this game is incomparable to any other. Like I said before, there's always going to be a prevailing majority favourite, not just for gameplay genre but also for the emotional genre, and there's no doubt that for a while now, people have had a definite favourite genre in dramas, and for good reason. It provides the most amount of tension and relatability. We don't all run into monsters on a daily basis like in horrors, and our conversations aren't bulked by witty one-liners like comedies. Drama is the genre most people can identify with, and as a result, the genre favours realism. And that's great, but people consume media for many different reasons, and when the output becomes so skewed, it's difficult for everyone to get what they're looking for. What would be just another option becomes niche or cult under the weight of the overwhelming trend, and unfortunately the creators in this variety often don't get the encouraging or financial praise that they deserve. I honestly think that this is why when a show like Brooklyn Nine-Nine almost gets cancelled, a huge flurry of people come out of the woodwork to support it and get it revived almost immediately. Because in an avalanche of interconnected, melodramatic shows that constantly try to grip you, a few dedicated people just wanted to hold on to one of the few rare pieces that do nothing but try to make you laugh in a short time frame every week, regardless of reality or plausibility. And that's exactly how I feel about Sunset Overdrive. I get that people like and want realism. I don't understand it, but I accept it. But if I want to see realism, I'll step outside my front door and use my fucking eyes. And I don't understand why every piece of media has to adhere to that trend nowadays. Sunset dared to break that trend. It dared to make you know that it was a fictional world with fictional people, where nothing bad was really going to happen, and then through effort and passion, still try its damn hardest to make you care about and enjoy it anyway. Whether you like the gameplay or not, you've got to respect that. And to be completely honest, those are the games and the films that I care about more. I play games for escape, as I hear so many other people say. Why would I want to escape into another world where the exact same rules, structures, finality, information, emotion, and hardships as the real world still apply? Sunset knows it's a game and plays to that strength. It tried to make you laugh in an industry filled with seriousness, tried to make you enjoy the impossible in an industry filled with restraint. And this is why, as I said at the beginning of the video, Floyd is the best character. He's the one that's constantly reminding you at intervals in the story that you shouldn't be worried, that this isn't serious, and the idea of an apocalypse as we've come to know it doesn't apply here. You're not gonna die, and it's okay that people already have, because they're just fictional and no one's really gonna get hurt. He's the characterized embodiment of everything this game is trying to say. You're the hero here, and this is your world. And there doesn't have to be tragedy or stress or difficulty. You can do everything you wish to. All you need to do here is enjoy yourself.
I look at it this way. The apocalypse is our chance to be whoever we want to be. No bosses, no rules. I call it the awesome apocalypse. Apocalypse.
He's there to remind you to treat this game like a game. To treat video games like video games again. To just have some fucking fun, man. You can care for these characters and enjoy being with them, but you don't have to feel personally devastated or invested in order to do that. Am I the only one that thinks you can simultaneously understand and enjoy a world and its characters without having to feel immensely related to and realized within their world and their life events? I can laugh, cry, or get shocked by something, regardless of if it's believable or not. And I can simultaneously love and care about something, all the while keeping hold of the idea that it's just fiction, and the possibilities are endless. And regardless of whether I'm physically ever able to relate to, understand, or experience it myself, I'm still along for the ride. I could tell you of the multiple reasons Sunset didn't get the praise it deserved. I could tell you of the many technical and cultural reasons why it underperformed. I could tell you in a way that mocks a game whose writing was 1,000,000 times shittier and still sold 10 times as many copies. I want to die. Sunset Overdrive had a lot working against it. For one thing, it was only on Xbox One. For another, the One was a relatively new console that still hadn't proven itself, lacking a varied and quality library, and previous failures on the console had caused people to be that much more skeptical about another new IP. For another thing, it was only on Xbox One. Seriously, this game should have been on other consoles. This one fucking blows. Sunset underperformed, and I've already talked about the major reason, honestly. It got buried under a showcase of highly anticipated titles. I think it just came down to competition. 2014 was a really good year for games. It was the last truly decent year for games, in my personal opinion, at least AAA ones. And even if they weren't games that I was personally excited for, I could tell that they were huge entries for existing fan bases, console user bases, and lovers of a certain genre. And whether those games lived up to the hype isn't the point. The point is that they were largely anticipated, and excitement is a finite resource. You might see a trailer for a game that you really liked, and now you're looking forward to it. But if 3 days earlier you saw a trailer for a game that you absolutely loved the look of, then that next game trailer's not going to look as impressive in comparison now. And when you've got all these highly anticipated titles building on top of each other, some are obviously going to get buried under the rest. There are a limited amount of places to be reserved in people's wallets. Sunset Overdrive had a purpose for being released in the time that it was, but at the same time, it was also a victim of it. If people didn't get what Sunset was trying to do or say, then it just became a game that didn't fall into the trends of what people currently liked. And unfortunately, that's exactly what happened. The changing consumer base simply wasn't looking for that kind of game anymore. You know, unless you re-release a game with colour, humour and simplistic controls that they liked as a kid, then they suddenly remember they do like that kind of game, but don't want any new iterations of that kind of game, because nostalgia is sacred and that totally makes non-hypocritical sense. So, it's been some time since Sunset Overdrive came out. Insomniac are always joking or teasing about a sequel, and I don't know if it'll happen. I hope it does. Though I know a lot of people like gritty FPSs, I also feel like maybe many people are growing tired of being let down by the developers' practices or a mediocre installment into their favourite franchise. Maybe you just want to play something where it feels good to shoot things. In that case, you can find this game pretty cheap nowadays. If you own an Xbox One, my sincerest apologies, call me if you need anything, you don't have to suffer alone. But seriously, consider picking this up if you haven't heard or seen much of it yet. Even if you think you prefer a standard run and gun shooter, I think you'll still enjoy the ride. I think you'll appreciate the detail and the effort that the developers took the time for in this game. I think you'll just have some fucking fun.
I told him, I said, drama's a one genre and Netflix can suck my cock. Yeah. Oh, hi. You made it to the end of the video. Well, thanks for watching. I really do appreciate it. I've been working on this one a while, and I really do feel very passionately about this game. Not Chaos Squad, though. Not Chaos Squad, though. Yes, it's an amazing 9 out of 10 game. Yes, that's right. It's not perfect. Not with what I've shown you so far. There's one more thing I want to show you about this game. You'll appreciate this. There's not a sailor out there who can't. Watch this. You see this? This is what makes it 10 out of 10. Look. You seen this? You seen what I'm doing right now? I have credits control. Not only can I skip them, but I can fast forward and pause them. Oh hey, my third cousin twice removed was in the catering department. There he is. I see his name. I was able to stop it. Actually, you know what? I'm just kidding. I don't give a fuck about any of these people. Now I won't potentially skip an after credits sequence. P.S. There is one. Well, this is amazing. This is an amazing feature. Why have my two favorite games of the past 10 years also been the only ones to do this in recent memory? Why do games I coincidentally like have the fucking foresight to put this feature into their games? Go, pause, go, pause, go, pause, go, pause, go, pause. Every game should do this. It's amazing. Every game should do this. Pause, go, pause, go. Thank you, Sunset Overdrive, for the greatest control scheme ever.
Now that is how you end a game.